looked around, hoping to see him, but he was nowhere to be found. Disappointed, she started to turn back when suddenly, he appeared behind her with a smile. Even though you had feelings for me, why didn't you accept my love earlier? Hechamanaika asked. Swati, looking down at the ground, replied, losing my parents and my life at a young age led me to believe that I was cursed. I fear that something bad might happen to you because of me. That's why I haven't been able to accept your marriage proposal until now. Swati, don't look down, look at me. If you trust me, give me your hand. Whatever happens next, I will take care of it, Hechamanaika said, extending his hand to her. At that moment, she thought for a second and placed her hand in his. He held her hand firmly and promised, no matter what hardships or happiness come our way, I will never let go of your hand. She replied, from now on, I will be with you through everything. Finally, Swati agreed to marry Hechamanaika. However, she worried about how the king would react and how society would mock Hechamanaika. But Hechamanaika reassured her by offering his left hand and saying, I will take care of everything. This gave her more courage, and she held his hand with her right hand and walked alongside him. They first got married in the Hindu tradition at the temple and then went to a mosque where they also married according to Islamic customs. As they walked home together, the people in the street watched them in astonishment. Some whispered to each other, what's left if a man brings home a courtesan and lives among decent people? But no one dared to confront Hechamanaika directly. As they reached the doorstep of the house, one elderly woman said, wait, you must not enter the house without first performing the evil eye ritual, and she performed the ritual with turmeric water before sending them into the house. The elderly woman then turned to Swati and said, listen, dear, I've known our Hechamanaika since he was a child. He has never looked at any girl with ill intentions. He always addresses any woman as mother. If he chose to marry you, even knowing your background, it's because he truly believes in your goodness. Whatever people in this street say, I will stand by you. If you need anything, I'm here for you. Just be careful and live up to the trust our Hechamanaika has placed in you. Be cautious, she advised. Swati, moved by her words, bent down to touch the elderly woman's feet and said, thank you, grandmother. Why are you touching my feet, dear? The elderly woman said, lifting her up and blessing her with, may you have a long, prosperous married life, before leaving. With the elderly woman's blessings, Swati felt somewhat relieved. A little time had passed when suddenly, two guards arrived at Hechamanaika's house and informed him, Naika, the king has summoned you. Hechamanaika told them, I will come. You may go now, and they left. As Hechamanaika prepared to leave for the royal palace, Swati, worried, came to him and said, why has the king summoned you? It seems like troubles have begun because you married me. Why should you suffer because of me? My fate is what it is. Please, leave me. To this, Hechamanaika replied, oh, silly girl, nothing will happen as you fear. I know our king well. Don't worry, stay calm. I'll go and be back soon, and he headed towards the royal palace. Upon seeing Hechamanaika, the king, slightly agitated, said, you've become quite bold lately. I hear you've been making decisions all on your own. Hechamanaika stepped forward and asked, King, what are you referring to? The king, growing more agitated, raised his voice, after doing everything, you still ask what I'm referring to. Hechamanaika stood there, confused and unsure of why the king was so upset. When he saw Hectamanaika, the king smiled slightly and said, "I'm a bit disappointed that you got married without informing us. If you had told us beforehand, we all would have arranged a grand celebration for your wedding. Why did you choose to have such a modest ceremony? And who is this girl?" Hectamanaika, returning to his usual demeanor, replied, "King, her name is Swati. She is a Devdasi. She never liked being a Devdasi, so in her situation, I had to marry her and provide her with a new life. We did not expect anything more from you except your kind blessings." The king, lifting Hectamanaika and saying, "I have no anger towards you except for marrying without informing me. I will host a banquet this evening on your behalf," clapped his hands and called the guards. As they approached, ready to carry out the king's orders, Hectamanaika interjected, "Forgive me, king, but we do not want a banquet at this time. I would prefer not to have people discussing her in various ways, which might hurt her feelings. Please allow us to remain in peace for a few days. I hope you will excuse me for declining your request." Though slightly disappointed by the refusal of the banquet, the king placed a bag of coins into Hectamanaika's hand and said, "This is not a gift I am giving you out of charity. After discussing with the officials, I have decided to appoint you as the supreme commander of the army. The salary increase that comes with this position is what I am giving you." Hectamanaika, thrilled by his promotion to supreme commander, could not contain his joy and waved his fist in the air. Seeing his happiness, the king patted him on the shoulder and said, "This is the wedding gift I am giving you." Taking the bag and gazing at it with tearful eyes, Hectamanaika looked up to the sky and then headed home. Upon seeing her husband return with tears in his eyes, Swati said, "This is why anyone marrying a woman of misfortune like me ends up crying. That's why I didn't want to come with you," she said with a touch of sorrow. Hectamanaika wiped his tears and drew her close, saying, "Silly girl, these are not tears of sorrow. These are tears of joy because my father's wish for me to become the supreme commander has been fulfilled so quickly. Remember, you are no longer a woman of misfortune. Keep that in mind." He gently wiped the tears from her cheek and embraced her. Swati, touched by his words, asked, "Is what you said true? What did you think?" "I am now the commander of all the soldiers in our kingdom," he replied, holding her close. The next morning, when Swati went to fetch water, no one wanted to speak to her. Even though no one spoke to her, she went about her duties. After a few days, people began to appreciate her good behavior, virtuous nature, devotion to God, and willingness to help others, and they started talking to her. In a short time, she gained a reputation as a good woman in the street. Hectamanaika's home, once filled with dust and neglect, was now clean and fragrant with the scent of sambarni, reminding him of the days when his mother, Prasunamba, was alive. Having a woman in the house added beauty to it. On the day Hectamanaika was officially declared the supreme commander of the army by the king, it was revealed that Swati was pregnant. This news brought boundless joy to Hectamanaika. From that moment, he took even greater care of her. No matter how much stress he faced in his duties, he never brought it home. 9 months later, a son was born to Hectamanaika and Swati. They named the child Rudra Nayakudu and began raising him with pride. By the time the child turned 2, he began playing with weapons like swords, mimicking his father. The sight of the boy performing prayers with his father at dawn, walking around the tulsi plant, and worshipping the images of gods was somewhat unusual and intriguing to Swati. But life is never just about fun, it also includes harsh experiences, and it seemed that the time for such experiences was approaching. On that day, along with prominent military officials, Hekchamanayaka had a meeting with the king in a secret chamber. He said, "King, according to the intelligence reports from our spies in Delhi, it appears that the current emperor of North India, Ulugh Khan, is planning to launch a campaign against South India, starting with a raid on Orugallu. If you permit, I suggest we inform Pratap Rudra, the ruler of Orugallu, about this and advise him to be vigilant. If necessary, we can also provide him with military support." Some agreed, stating that helping Orugallu would ensure support from them when needed. Additionally, uniting all the southern kingdoms against Ulugh Khan was essential to prevent the devastation that Malik Kafur had wrought. In such critical times, mutual support among neighboring kingdoms was crucial. However, others argued against offering help without being asked, questioning the guarantee of receiving support from Orugallu if Ulugh Khan changed his mind and attacked their kingdom instead. They suggested that in such a delicate situation, it was better to focus on defending their own kingdom rather than experimenting with uncertain outcomes. As these two arguments continued, the king made a decision: send a letter to Pratap Rudra, informing him of Ulugh Khan's impending raid on Orugallu and advising him to stay alert. Mention that we are ready to provide military support if needed. Support if needed. Ulugh Khan might attack Orugallu, and there are also chances he could target our coastal defenses. So, alert all our troops and ensure they are prepared for battle at any moment. Strengthen security at our kingdom's borders. If necessary, recruit new soldiers. Until this threat is over, it is our responsibility to protect this kingdom as if it were our very eyes. The king then concluded the meeting. Post